not take this situation seriously.
Question number 8, Phil Twyford.
My question is for the Minister of Transport. How much is the New Zealand Transport Agency expected to borrow for land transport projects in each of the 3 financial years after the Land Transport Management Amendment Act comes into force?
The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, as the available revenue for each of the 3 financial years after the Land Transport Management Act bill comes into force is currently unknown, no specific answer can be given. Since 2010, a facility has existed for short-term borrowing by New Zealand Transport Agency to smooth out the pay-go system of funding, as was provided in the 2008 amendments to the Land Transport Management Act 2003. Mr Speaker, the short-term facility is currently set at $250 million, and any further borrowing over that has to be and will continue to be approved by the Ministers of Transport and Finance.
Phil Twyford.
Supplementary. Is the plan to allow NZTA to borrow, the new plan that is, not the existing power to borrow merely for cash flow purposes, a response to the projected $1.5 billion shortfall in the National Land Transport Fund by 2020, or the scenario of a $4.5 billion shortfall from 2021 to 2030?
The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, no. In fact, the capacity for New Zealand Land Transport, for the New Zealand Transport Agency to borrow has existed for a very long time. The member will be aware that the Northern Gateway, a program and a project that was consented, designed and built and funded by debt by the previous government, was done outside of the National Land Transport Fund. What this bill allows is for those sort of projects to be completed inside the National Land Transport Fund.
That's the only difference. Brendan Horan.
If the NZTA has the power to borrow for major roading projects, will a similar borrowing mechanism apply to public transport, including KiwiRail? And if not, why not?
The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, all Crown entities have capacity to borrow, but that is constrained by Section 106 of the Crown Entities Act, which requires that the appropriate Minister and the Minister of Finance agree to that borrowing.
Phil Twyford.
Does he agree with the Prime Minister when he said, the government has to stop borrowing so much money? If we don't, quite frankly, New Zealand will be downgraded and interest rates will go up for all New Zealanders. And if so, why does he want to borrow to fund projects, many of which have such low benefit-cost ratios?
The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Well, Mr Speaker, the question is based on the member's own view and assumption about things. The reality is that there is no plan for the course of action the member is asserting is going to take place.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Does it make economic sense to borrow to fund the Puhoi to Wellsford Holiday Highway, which has a benefit-cost ratio that barely breaks even and costs $1.7 billion, when a $400 million upgrade would fix its congestion and safety problems?
The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, while I disagree with many of the assertions made in that question, I would say that I think providing a stronger link to Northland, where there is so much poverty yet so much economic potential, is a good idea.
Phil Twyford.
Does he remember a set of projects of national significance, handpicked by the National Party in the 1980s, that left the country saddled with debt for decades afterwards, called Think Big, and did he ever imagine that they would return from the dead as the roads of national significance?
The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Well, Mr Speaker, I think that is a completely erroneous sort of comparison. But I would say that, well, some analysis of those projects will show that the member's assertions are wrong. But I would say that the City Rail link in Auckland certainly sounds like a project that would fit the bill he describes.
Question number 9, Dr. Jan Yang.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the